The atmosphere around Golden State no longer had anything to do with those light, noisy days full of absolute confidence. There was something different in the air. The stands still had applause, still had shouting, but in the middle of all that, a strange, uncomfortable silence appeared, as if everyone was waiting for an answer that still hadn't come. Fans looked at the court, and deep down knew they were facing a turning point. It wasn't just another season at risk. It was the feeling that an entire era might be reaching its limit. The team that transformed the way the league played, that became a reference in creativity, boldness, and tactical intelligence, now seemed trapped in a cycle of doubt, repeated mistakes, injuries at decisive moments, pieces that did not connect in the right way. The machine that once almost ran by itself was now creaking. The veteran star still shone with absurd intensity, still inspired respect and fear in any arena, but around him everything felt heavier, more confusing, less automatic. The standings reflected that feeling exactly, wins and losses balancing out in a dangerous way, like a tightrope. A roster with talent spread across it, but without the fine-tuning that had always been the franchise's trademark. Plays that once came naturally now looked forced. Actions that once appeared by instinct now depended on extra effort. Instead of total confidence, there was hesitation. Instead of full conviction, questions emerged that no one could answer firmly. And in the middle of this fluctuation, the physical factor turned into a nightmare. Injuries in crucial areas exposed the team's weaknesses even more. Paint defense, which was never a strong point, became an even more obvious problem. The rotation became unstable, improvised, full of patches. The front office knew they could no longer sweep this under the rug. Each remaining year, with their greatest reference still at a high level, was a treasure that could not be wasted. It was in this context, with urgency mixed with uncertainty, that one name began to appear strongly behind the scenes. Domantas Sabonis, a dominant center, unique reading of the game, the passing of a point guard in a big man's body, a consistent scorer, a reliable rebounder. For many people, he was exactly the kind of player that was missing to bring balance to the system, someone capable of organizing the attack from the inside out, easing the pressure on the stars and providing a fixed axis for the team to revolve around. On the other side, reports began to surface that the rival in Sacramento would be willing to listen to offers for practically any piece on the roster. That set off a general alert. If there was a real opportunity to take a player of that caliber from a direct competitor and at the same time fill a historic weakness of the team, how could they ignore it? But every apparent solution carries shadows. And with Sabonis, it was no different. The big man's offensive numbers impress. High efficiency, ability to create for others, constant involvement in almost every possession. Many analysts projected that, with him on the court alongside the main perimeter star and an emotional leader like Draymond Green, the offense could gain a new dimension. More inside game, more cuts, more reads, more variety, less dependence on a single type of play. In theory, it sounded perfect. Except basketball is not played only with the ball in your hands. The challenge was precisely on the other end of the floor. The franchise was already struggling to contain physical offenses, already taking a beating in the paint on some nights, already seeing opponents exploit its weak points in pick-and-roll situations and drives. And Sabonis, as good as he was offensively, has never been seen as an elite rim protector. He delivers rebounds, delivers physicality, delivers effort, but he does not turn the paint defense into a wall. That is where the questions arose. Did it really make sense to bet heavily on more offensive creation if the biggest hole was at the back? Was it worth further compromising defensive mobility to boost scoring power, given that the team was already naturally strong on offense when healthy? The debate heated up because the big man's contract was not light either, and still had a few years left. It was not a simple gamble. It would be a medium-term commitment to a profile that might not be ideal. Within the franchise, some internal specialists began to defend a very straightforward logic. Any major impact move should only be approved if it helped in two specific areas: rim protection and offensive spacing. In other words, The focus should be on bringing in someone who could defend like a specialist without clogging up the offense, keeping the three-point lines clear for the perimeter stars to operate at full capacity. Sabonis ticked some of those boxes, but not all. Even so, the state of the roster made it hard to ignore any chance of reinforcement. The front court was weakened. Some veterans no longer had the same physical volume. Important players had missed games due to medical issues, and young players still alternated good moments with invisible nights. In a scenario where several franchises were still deciding whether they would buy or sell on the market, Golden State felt the urgency growing. They could not wait forever for a perfect opportunity. Under that pressure, one internal name started to become an increasingly mentioned trade chip: Jonathan Kuminga. Sacramento had always been curious about the young forward's potential. Athletic, explosive, aggressive attacking the rim, with flashes of talent that made it clear there was much more there to be polished. But at the same time, signs of wear were beginning to appear in Golden State. Irregular minutes, fluctuating performances, tactical challenges, public comments from the coach demanding improvement in specific aspects of his game. The relationship was not broken yet, but it no longer felt so stable. And the clock did not stop. Kuminga's market value was high at that moment, but no one knew how long that would last. Keeping him meant betting on the long term. Including him in a trade meant trying to accelerate the present. That is when the first more concrete rumors surfaced. The possibility circulated of a package involving Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Buddy Hield, in exchange for Sacramento sending Sabonis and Keon Ellis. On one side, youth, versatility, potential, and an already established shooter. On the other, an all-star center capable of structuring the offense, and a guard who could add energy and defense on the perimeter. It was not just a roster move, it was a root reset. Losing Kuminga would mean giving up on a high-ceiling project. Letting Moody go would mean sacrificing a disciplined, reliable player with a mature mentality and the ability to cover different roles. And there was still the question of how to fit Hield into a system already full of players who need the ball at certain moments. In return, the team would gain a ready-made structure, experience, and immediate power in areas of need. Youth for stability, potential for security. Meanwhile, inside the locker room, nobody spoke openly about it, but everyone knew. Players looked around and silently wondered who would still be there once the dust settled. Some approached each practice as a kind of final test. Others just tried to keep their heads straight. The emotional side was beginning to weigh. It was not just about minutes or stats. It was about belonging or not to the next chapter of that group. Amid all this structural confusion, an uncomfortable truth became impossible to ignore. Golden State was not just looking for a center. It was looking for a team soul, for a way of playing that made sense again, for an identity that could withstand both the pressure to win now and the need not to completely destroy tomorrow. That is why the internal conversations started to change tone. Instead of discussing only who for who, contract for contract, some technical advisors began to ask deeper questions. Is the main problem really about who comes in or who leaves? Or is the core issue about recovering the philosophy that made this team special? Because individual talent exists, experience exists, but that feeling that everyone was connected to the same idea, that the system came before the pieces, that seemed shaken. Over the years, the team that had once been unpredictable and revolutionary became more predictable. It was still respected, still dangerous, still had brilliant nights, but it stopped surprising people. The same plays, the same patterns, the same offensive paths. And the doubt here was precisely this. Would Sabonis come to provide new possibilities, or would he reinforce the predictable pattern, further centralizing the offense in actions already mapped by rivals? While meetings took place behind the scenes, the main star kept doing what he had always done, producing at a high level. But even that had changed tone. His posture seemed more introspective, as if each game were less an isolated event and more a farewell chapter of a prime. He knew he would not have endless years at the top. He also knew that not every aggressive move means evolution. Sometimes desperation disguises decisions that hurt the essence. On the other side of the world, in a totally different setting, Another name was starting to gain strength in conversations about the future of the franchise's front court, Sotto. While Golden State tried to find itself, the Filipino center was building an impressive path in the B-League. In one of his recent games against the Kyoto team, he showed exactly why so many eyes are on him. He dropped 20 points, grabbed 4 rebounds, and dished out 3 assists in a performance that combined consistency with moments of pure brilliance. It was not just about pretty numbers on the box score. Every touch of the ball conveyed confidence. Every movement in the paint seemed calculated. He used his height and wingspan to impose respect near the rim, but also showed mobility and a mid-range jumper that is visibly evolving. In one specific play that stuck in the minds of those who watched, he received the ball at the mid-range area, drew 2 defenders, faked the pass, attacked the rim, took the foul, finished the layup, and completed the 3-point play. It was the kind of sequence that shows not just technique, but personality. It showed that, even though he is young, he does not hide in moments of pressure. On the contrary, he seeks contact, embraces the spotlight, and responds with quality. But Kai's story is not summed up in one great game. Over his recent run in the Japanese league, he has been putting up numbers that show consistency. He is very close to reaching the mark of 1,000 points in the competition, just over 7 dozen away from that. He has already comfortably surpassed the barrier of 500 rebounds, a clear indicator of his influence on both boards, and he is only a few assists away from joining the group of players who have totaled 100 decisive passes. These milestones are not just statistical trivia. They help explain why his name is appearing so often in debates about possible future signings for the NBA. Kai is not just a tall player who occupies space in the paint. He reads the game. He understands cutting timing. He knows when to give the ball up to a better positioned teammate. And above all, he does not play just to inflate his own numbers, but to impact the scoreboard. Over time, international commentators began to draw parallels between Kai's style and that of some great centers of the recent past, precisely because of this combination of height, soft touch, and court vision. Of course, every comparison has its limits, but the common point was always the same. This is a player who can, with the right development, become much more than just a rotation role player. In the stands and on social media, the movement in favor of him going to the NBA continues to grow. And in that discussion, one destination appears with special frequency: the Golden State Warriors. Fans started to imagine what it would be like to have a young center with size and mobility, working within a system based on cuts, constant movement, and intelligent reads. For many people, that union would make a lot of sense. The franchise needs someone who can protect the rim better, help on the boards, and provide a stronger physical presence without clogging the offense. Kai, by profile, seems to fit several of those needs. He is not a stiff giant. He has enough agility to keep up with plays at speed, can rise to contest shots, has a soft touch near the rim, and also shows a mid-range jumper in full development. On top of that, he brings an ingredient that is sometimes underestimated: international experience. Even though he is young, he has already faced different playing styles, officiating adjustments, opponents from various basketball schools. That tends to make the transition to the NBA easier, where each game can have its own dynamic. And, more importantly, he shows a very clear mentality of continuous improvement. He does not seem satisfied with what he already does. He is always adding something. This growth mindset connects directly with the kind of culture Golden State has always valued behind the scenes. Players who understand the collective, who adapt, who are willing to learn, who do not limit themselves to a static role. This is where the comparison between betting heavily on a ready, expensive center like Sabonis or investing in a rising talent like Kai starts to take on an even more interesting tone. On one side, a consolidated star with guaranteed immediate impact, but who does not completely fix the defensive gaps and still carries a heavy contract. On the other, a young player still in development, without any guarantee of instant success, but with the potential to address essential needs in the medium term, at a lower financial cost and with a much greater margin for growth. It is exactly at this crossroads that Golden State's front office finds itself today, between the temptation of a big name that offers quick answers and the possibility of building something new with an emerging profile that can grow alongside the system's adjustments. And all of this is happening while the team's main star is still at a high enough level to swing series on his own, but already knows this window will not last forever. And that is it. The big question now is simple and at the same time huge. Which path will Golden State choose for the future of its front court and for the last high-level years of its main star? Will it bet on an immediate solution with an already established center, or will it have the courage to build something new by investing in a rising talent like Sotto, who can change the team's balance down the line? The answers are not set yet, but one thing is already clear. The next move could completely redefine the franchise's destiny. If you want to keep following every step of this saga, every behind-the-scenes rumor, every trade possibility, and all the fallout surrounding Golden State's future, then take a moment now to hit the like button and subscribe. That helps a lot, so more people receive this kind of content, and so you do not miss any updates. Turn on notifications, comment what you would do if you were in the front office's place, and share this with that friend who is always debating the NBA with you. Your participation makes all the difference for us to keep bringing you more and more complete stories.